Barbara Bush, who's Solutions for Special Needs Families. I've known Barbara for many years now that we've gone through all the circuits, and this is our third time presenting for Building Bridges, and very well attended session. Everybody has lots of questions, so let's go ahead and get started, Barbara, and thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you, Jim. So today I'm going to be talking about SSI. What is it and how does it work? It has wonderful benefits, but it has complications. Okay, let's see if I can get my, there we go. So first of all, there are two different programs, and they come from two different funds. So federal, and that's an entitlement program. This is what we all pay in when we're working. So that is called Title II benefits. And with that, you get Medicare. The supplemental security income, which is Title 16, is really a welfare program, and that is funded by the state. With supplemental security income, you get, Medicaid. Oh, somehow my machine is going crazy. Okay, let's see. See if I can get my apologies. I dropped my mouse and it's not happy. Okay.
We all love technology, I promise.
Oh gosh, I do too. Okay, let's try it again.
Well, we're seeing your speaker notes, Barbara.
Oh, okay. That's not what I want.
Yeah, we got to see the other side of you. Display settings up at the top, or maybe we'll switch it. Up there in the middle. I don't know if she can see what we're seeing though. Yeah.
Then stop video. Display set, sorry. I should be more technically.
There you go, hit that one. There we are, we're good.
Okay, sorry. So to explain a little bit, supplemental security, why is this doing this? Okay. Supplemental security income, as I said. See if we can keep it here. Is for the age, blind, and disabled. An individual receiving Title 16 benefits are known as a recipient. And with that, when you get SSI, you receive your benefit on the first of the month. So SSI is provided to three groups of people. One is the financially needed individual, 65 and over, blind individuals, and disabled individuals. Also, you have no work history, insufficient quarters to be eligible for Title II benefits. That means when we work, everyone, if you can earn $1,510 in 3 months, you get one credit. And so this is, you have to have certain credits to be eligible for Title II benefits. And you can have Title II benefits, which are below $841. And we can go into some of that a little bit later. So government benefits change after the age of 18. So if your child had SSI prior to 18, you must file again as an adult. Social Security has different criteria to determine if you're disabled from a child to an adult. When you turn 18, Social Security only looks at the individual's income. Prior, it would be the parent's income. One of the things, the effects of child support, if any of you are divorced or if you know of somebody that's going through a divorce, child support prior to age 18, there's not a problem with that. But once your child becomes 18, Social Security said, well, that is the child's income. And then your child is not qualified to receive SSI. So what you have to do is have it's a court-ordered self-settled trust where the child support is deposited into that trust. And then the child can be qualified for SSI. So if any of you have any questions about this, let me know, and I will definitely talk on this further. So to be eligible for SSI, you have to have limited resources, which means less than $2,000. And this is any money that is in your name. The way Social Security knows about this, they use different credit reporting apps. So they use that Social Security number and they look to see if there's any assets in that person's name. You must have a severe medical condition. They have a lot of different diagnosis in there. It's called the Blue Book. And you have to meet certain criteria for them to approve the medical condition. You must be a U.S. citizen and you must file for benefits. The individual is not working or incapable of earning a substantial wage. And a substantial wage, in their opinion, is anywhere from $1,000 to $1,300 a month. So when the individual receives SSI, they automatically receive Star Plus Medicaid. And to remain eligible for Medicaid, the individual cannot have more than $2,000 at the end of any given month. If you have $2,010, you've gone over the $2,000 limit. And you must receive at least $1 from SSI to keep your benefits.
Barbara.
Yes. Was there a question?
But you don't know that. There is. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yes.
Speaking to the 2,000, is that assets of the parent or is that the child?
Once they're 18, it's the assets of the child. Prior to 18, it's the assets of the parent.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So when you're approved for SSI, usually Social Security will appoint a parent or guardian as the representative payee. A representative payee is a person who manages the SSI benefit, corresponds with Social Security, and monitors the assets. Next, you'll set up a checking account titled Mary Smith as representative payee for John Smith. You'll give that information to the Social Security office, and then they direct deposit money into that checking account. The representative payee must know the rules regarding how money can be spent and know the rules regarding work when earned income. So one of the things I know, we want our children to participate and be as independent as possible. But unless your child is really well-versed in math and accounting and bookkeeping, balancing checkbooks, I would not recommend having your child be responsible for all of this information. So in 2022, the federal benefit rate is $841 for an individual. Now, as of January 2023, it goes up to $914 a month. So Social Security looks at two sources of income. So there's unearned income and there's earned income and in-kind support and maintenance. So unearned income, let's go to the next slide, is that if your child is receiving Title II benefits. Title II benefits will come when the parent retires and begins taking their own Social Security, if a parent dies, if a parent is disabled. The disabled child is entitled to half of those benefits. I'm sorry, if a parent dies, they're entitled to 75% of that Social Security benefit. Unearned income can also be VA benefits, interest, allowance, any assets, gifts, winnings, and child support. So earned income is food and shelter in lieu of wages and wages. We're going to go into explaining exactly what food and shelter means. So this is how Social Security reduces a person's benefit when they work. So if your child makes $585 a month, and this is gross, they say you can keep the first $85. The remainder of that you divide in half, and $250 is your countable earned income. So here's a longer explanation. So again, you're working, you're making $585. There's two different exclusions. One is earned income exclusion of $65, and then there's the general income exclusion. So you subtract that from 585, get 500, divide it in half. There's countable earned income, again, is $250. So the maximum rate that your child can get is $841. But if they are not paying the parent rent, and there is not a rental agreement that says that child is obligated to pay rent, then Social Security says, well, that is income to the child. Because if anyone else was living in your house and eating your food, you would probably pay, charge them rent. I mean, it's hard for a parent to understand that they have to charge their own child rent because their child's going to live there. But if you want the full $841 or $914 next year, you have to charge rent. So Social Security says, well, if you're not charging rent, then we're going to take a third of your benefit away. So now, if you take the $280, the $250, you've got $530 of adjusted total. This is your countable income. You have to subtract that from $841, and the SSI payment is $310. So your representative payee's responsibility when your child works is you have to send the gross earnings, the pay stubs, by the 10th of the following month. So if your child worked all of October, you gather the pay stubs and submit those to Social Security by the 10th of November. You have to do this each month. So if the rep payee does not submit these wages and there's an overpayment, the representative payee can be personally liable to pay the money back. That's why it's important for a parent to be this person versus a disabled child. If there is an overpayment, you can request Social Security to only take 10% of the recipient's SSI benefit each month until it's paid back. And always know that an overpayment can be appealed. There are 4 ways to report that, the wages. There's a phone app, and it's SSI Mobile Wage Report. You can call them and report it by phone, or you can fax or mail pay stubs. This is their least favorite because it can take them 2 to 3 months to review and enter the information. Social Security is behind anyway. So they may get that your child made that $585, not look at that each month has changed since then, and just continue to use that amount even if the wages go up or go down. So again, the representative payee is responsible to understand this. Keep all pay stubs, not just a W-2 or 1099, because Social Security wants to know each month how much that person made. So also, what Social Security, this is how overpayments happen. So what SSI sends you may not be what you're entitled to keep. So this is a spreadsheet, and it is to help families, what was the total unearned income? Well, if there was none, obviously that's 0. Total earned income, and this one we're going to say is $585. Were there any work expenses? We're going to go into this in another slide. And then what is the countable income? So what was the amount received by SSI? Did they send you a full $841? So you then need to figure out if the countable earned income from those calculations in the prior slide were $250, then you subtract that again from that 841, and that's what was the amount you should have received. Then you can find out, have you been overpaid or underpaid? But either way, if you've been overpaid, don't spend that money, because Social Security will catch up. It may take them a year or two. I mean, I've had one case that took 15 years back, that they went back to look at and wanted $89,000. So it's so smart to understand how they look at this and for you to be on top of it. So we talked earlier about work exclusions. So they are to reduce your countable earned income. It also can help you increase your financial self-sufficiency. It prevents termination of benefits. It protects the access to medical benefits, and you purchase certain items in order to work. So the first one we're going to talk about is student earned income exclusions. So if your child is regularly attending school, and which means in high school, at least 12 hours per week, or in college, at least 8 hours per week, in vocational training, at least 12 hours per week. A student regularly attending school, and this is a big one, and under 22 can exclude up to $2,040 of earned income each month. Now, if you don't use all of the $2,040 in 1 month, it's cumulative. And if you used 1,000 of that, you have 1,040 that's now added to the next month. So a student can exclude up to a maximum earned income of $8,230 in 2022. So to qualify, you have to obtain a written statement from a school official stating the student is regularly attending school, the number of hours of attendance each week. The principal will be able to provide this for you. You present the statement with a letter requesting eligibility for the student earned income exemption to the local Social Security office. Keep reporting income each month. If you can't assume Social Security read your letter, so follow up, make sure that they've read it, make sure that it is in place. But this is a calendar year, so you have to repeat this every January. So this is the financial impact. Again, we're using the 585. You get your income exclusions. Here we're going to deduct $500 for the student earned income exemption, which then leaves the countable earnings at 0, and you get the full SSI benefit. There's another one called impairment-related work expenses. This is an item in service the impairment requires, not the person, to enable the person to work. The item or service must be purchased by the disabled person. It can't be purchased by the parent, and then the parent takes money out of their SSI. It has to come from either SSI or, an ABLE account or earned income. But it has to be the person that individual's money. The expense is claimed when the earned income is reported. Claims cannot cost more than the amount of earned income. So these are the things that would qualify. So if you have attendant care service, medical equipment, non-medical appliances, modifications to your home, prescription drugs or services, a service animal, transportation, services received in a community residential program, fees for supported living programs, and similar items. And always know that if you are the caregiver, that's considered attendant care services, the parent. So, if your child has that capability of making quite a bit of money, then you look at, do you take them to work? Do they use Uber or Lyft? So you have to look at all those expenses to reduce that adjusted rate. So again, if your child's making $1,625, subtract the 85, we're going to deduct $615 from expenses. Divide 925 and 2. We're assuming that you're getting the full SSI benefit. So the adjusted benefit is $378.50. Whereas if you didn't have that, your adjusted benefit is $71. And this really becomes important if you're not receiving that full $841. Work subsidies. This is another one that is so beneficial. So you ask the employer to complete form SSI 3033. It's a work activity questionnaire. What it asks is, does the employer give fewer or easier duties, irregular hours, special transportation, less hours, more breaks? Do they have frequent absences, lower productivity standards, extra help or supervision, lower quality of standards, or any special equipment? If so, the employer may say the individual works at 50, 60, or 75% or more less than other employees paid the same amount. So this can reduce countable earnings by the percent chosen by the employer. So they can earn $1,400 a month, and at 50% less, their only countable wages is $700. So what if you're not receiving that full $841? So again, in-kind support and maintenance is treated as income. Social Security determines if the recipient is not paying their fair share of housing and food, Social Security takes 1/3 of their benefit away. Now the person only receives $560. So what can be done? Well, that's where I recommend using an ABLE account to pay the fair share of food and housing. So here's my example. So you've got mom and dad and a sibling. The mortgage, so you have 4 people living in the house. The mortgage payment's $2,000. And in this, I'm counting that property insurance and property taxes are part of that $2,000. The average monthly bills are $300 for electricity, $100 for water and sewer, $800 for food. So your total monthly expenses are $3,200. Because there's 4 people in the house, you divide that by 4. And so your child with special needs, their rent should be $800. Well, they can't pay that if they're getting $560. So when your child receives the $560, the representative payee sends a check for $500 to the parents for room and board. So a trustee of a special needs trust or an individual can contribute to the ABLE account. So if you have $300, you can put on the first of the month into an ABLE. The ABLE administrator withdraws that $300 and sends that to mom and dad for rent. So here's a little example of how this works. Special needs child gets that SSI money of $561. I rounded it up. Your examples, rent is $800. So family assets can go into the ABLE account. If there is money in a special needs trust, that can go into the ABLE account. And then from the ABLE account, you send $300. And I always ask parents to open a separate checking account, only in the parents' names. Don't have that child associated with it. So then they're paying you rent. Now, if you wanted, you can turn around and put that back into the ABLE account. Or you can spend that money however you see fit for your child. There's no restrictions because now it's in your name. So after this has happened for at least 2 months, you will get copies of the bank statements where it shows money's coming out of the SSI account, money's coming out of the ABLE account to equal that $800. You need a rental agreement that's signed by your disabled child and the parent, and you complete Form 8006 and submit that to Social Security. There can be 2 separate accounts, an ABLE account and an SSI account. It is also possible you can have SSI go directly into the ABLE account. They will direct deposit it to it if you're worried about going over that $2,000 mark. Also, the SSI payment should not ever be deposited into a special needs trust. Now that you don't go into the offices anymore, it's sometimes impossible to get things date stamped. I recommend faxing it in because then you've got a fax confirmation of the date, and then keep all copies forever. So this is a huge topic. There's so much more to cover. I know I covered this fast, and hopefully we've got some questions and we can talk about any of this, or you can call me anytime. My contact information is below. You can send me an email with your questions, but I'd be happy to answer any of these questions. So when we open this up to questions, Jim?
Does anybody have any questions for Barb? No, it's a lot to process.
It is a lot. And if somebody wants me to go back to a slide, I'm happy to do that.
It looks like we have a question.
Okay.
I saw one slide show a connection between SSI and Medicaid eligibility.
Yes,
Can you explain that a little bit more?
sure. So in Texas, the rule is if you get SSI, you are immediately qualified to receive Medicaid. And
Okay.
so you have to follow, to keep SSI, you have to follow those Medicaid rules of not going over that $2,000 limit.
Okay. So for someone who you're primarily looking at, just if they may eventually be eligible for Medicaid as an 18-year-old, do we start at the SSI type process, or is there a different path toward application?
Now you start at the SSI process. One of the things I didn't mention is if your child's deemed disabled through SSI or Social Security prior to age 22, you can file for SSI after 22, but the diagnosis has to come before 22. Then your child is connected to your Social Security work record. So when you retire, they're entitled to half of your benefit, doesn't take away from yours. And 24 months later, they get Medicare and Medicaid. So this is always something to consider when you're getting closer to that, 67 age, thinking about retirement. The other one is if you decide to delay taking your benefits from Social Security to 70, that increases it for you, but not for your child. They're only entitled to what you would have gotten at that full retirement age. But then when you pass away, they get 75% for the rest of their life.
All right, Barb, we have another question.
Sure.
If this could potentially start at 18, what's the best case scenario of when a parent should start this process?
I would say it depends on how organized the parent is. It could be 2 or 3 months prior to age 18. If you're not very organized and you don't know where to get medical records, you haven't keeping copies of medical records, because that's the most important. You have to show the longevity of that condition. So say you're up to date, you know where you can get copies of the original diagnosis. You've got a list of all the doctors your child sees. You can obtain some medical records from there. You'll need the latest IEP, FIE, ARDS. You will need a psychological evaluation that's been done in the last 6 months to a year. And then there's all kinds of information on different forms.
So Barb, I have a question, just for clarification. Sometimes our families just get an FIE from the school district, and they never go to a medical doctor for that diagnosis. Can they use that for SSI, or do they need to have a medical diagnosis from a doctor in order to qualify?
They have to have a medical diagnosis from a doctor. And that
I want to make sure they do that.
right. A psychologist, a PhD, a neurologist, or medical doctor. But somebody's going to have to say what the condition is and how severe it is, how it impacts that person's life.
Anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
I just had one other question, if you knew about this.
Sure.
If we'd started a 529 account for a child's education,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess the first question is, how much of an impact does that have on this process? And then the second question, I guess, would be, I've read about a 529 ABLE account. And I just, there's not a lot of clear information about what that is and the value of that, and if a rollover from a 529 is appropriate.
So the 529C, which is for college, is not countable income for your child. But as you know, with a 529C, you can only use it for the beneficiary, and if you've named your child as the beneficiary, or if they're going to school. So if they're not going to go to college, then you can roll it over, but you can only roll over $16,000. The ABLE is a 529A. So you can only roll over $16,000 a year. You can have up to $100,000 in there. I would not recommend it because if something happened to your child and they die, Medicaid is the beneficiary. So that's why I always say, but you can also, if you have another child or somebody, or if you want to go back to college, you can change the beneficiary on that 529C. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Okay, I guess I'm following on to my husband's question. I didn't read his mind before he asked the question. So
Okay.
when the 529A, so do they have to is like the ABLE account, is that related to them qualifying for SSI, or is that just an account, a type of account that you can set up that can be used for different things other than education?
Correct.
529A.
529A, you have to be over 18, I believe, but you also have to have a disability. It's only for people with disabilities. You don't have to provide the information to the organization that's overseeing those. In Texas, it's Texas Controller's Office is the one that oversees. It's like an online bank. And there is the criteria that obviously you have to have a disability. That disability has to occur before age 26. They're trying to move that up to 46, but as far as I know, it has not passed. But you can use money in the ABLE account to go on vacations, anything to improve that person's life. You want to buy a new chair, a TV, any of this stuff you can spend that are qualified. And if you go to texasable.org, it gives you all of the things that you can, the different areas where you can spend the money. Just know with housing, which I would never recommend this, but you can take money out of the ABLE account and put it into your child's name, and then that child has to pay within the same month rent. I think it's a little cleaner. The money goes straight to the parents who are considered the landlord for rent. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And so that texasable.org, that would have more information too about it, not just what it can go for, but like how to set that sort of thing up, or is there a better place to look for that information?
No, that's exactly where you go to open an account.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, excuse me, I think you have to put at least $50 in. But it'll talk about fees and, as with all banks, there are certain fees. Now, you don't have to use the Texas ABLE account. You can go to any state. Almost all states have an ABLE account, but you can only have one ABLE account. You can't have one in Texas and one in Virginia or in Ohio. But if you decided you had money in the Texas ABLE, you go, oh my gosh, the one in Ohio doesn't charge this fee or doesn't do this. And, you know, you can roll your money, close that account and roll it into the other state's ABLE account.
I think because where some of our questions are coming from is we do have a 529C for our son. But we're not 100% sure, you know, how much of that he'll actually use to go forward into college. You know, how much of that, you know, so like you said, if it's a 529C, it's just for school. Can't use it for anything else. So that's why we're interested in, okay, maybe something with a little more flexibility would be more useful.
Right. Now, the 529C does not go to Medicaid if your child dies. The 529A does go to Medicaid, so to speak. If Medicaid if you've used Medicaid at all, then they want to be paid back for everything they've spent. Okay.
So that's why I was curious, like if we don't, because I'm not 100% sure if he would qualify for SSI or Medicaid, you know, I guess we're gonna have to investigate that. But that's why I was asking, so is this ABLE, this 529 ABLE type thing, is that unrelated to qualifying for SSI and Medicaid and all of that?
Yes, it is unrelated.
Okay.
Can they have two accounts? Can they have a 529C and a 529A?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of parents have started that 529C for college. And then, you know, as their child's gotten older, you know, the expectation was, well, they're going to be able to go to college. And then as they got older, they go, oh, I don't think this is going to happen. So you can roll over each year money into that. The other ABLE. Sorry, I've got a dog in here whining.
Well, Barb, thank you so much for joining us again. You always have such great information and much needed information.
Thank you. And, you know, again, reach out to me if you've got other questions you think of. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.